Hey guys, Reaper 5.980 just came out. Let's look at what's new. There's not a whole lot in this update. It's a pretty small one, but there are some pretty important things, some things that can affect performance for all users, and then some really kind of niche features that will help very specific people. And if you enjoy this series of videos, please consider being a patron at patreon.com/thereaperblog. Really helps me keep doing what I'm doing here. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is jump to time, add support for jumping in relative time in earliest selected media item. So the jump to window, I've got it on Command J, but I think the default is J. Anyways, so if I have this item selected here, and I want to jump to 2 beats from the item start, so I press I and then 2, and that should be 2 beats from the item start. And so the item starts here, 1, 2, and there's the start. The jump to window does follow the ruler settings. So we're going to change the ruler to minutes and seconds and then open up the jump to window. Now I can type in I2 and it's going to jump 2 seconds into the start of the item. So if we look from here to here, that's 2 seconds. And you can see that in the corner here, 2 seconds. So that works with multiple selected items. So if I press I and then let's say 1:10, that should jump to 1 minute and 10 from the beginning of the first selected item. A more practical situation might be like you want to select 15 seconds from the start. I copy this, open up this, so I and then 15, no, I 0, 15. It puts it 15 seconds from the start of this item. I can paste again and just repeat the process if I want to repeat with a gap sort of thing. It's not the most convenient way to do that particular task, but it just kind of shows you how that works with using the item start as the offset for the jump to window. In that window, you can also do things like +3, and it will move the edit cursor 3 seconds ahead. Or if you're in bars and beats view, then that's going to be in 3 bars. Pretty straightforward, but pretty useful. What can also be really useful is a ruler just for the items. I'm going to right click, item settings, and display item ruler. We have item time, hours, minutes, seconds, frames, and source time. I like having it on source time if I'm going to use this. We've got this little ruler lane below the item. And so this is a per item option. So here, you can see I have this little gap at the start of the item. If I hold down Alt and drag that over, you can see that the ruler adjusts its source time along with it. So let's say we make a split here and a split here, and we drag this over and we nudge that again. You can see that the ruler follows the original source time code on this item. So this ruler here, where it says 0.25, that's 250 milliseconds from the start of the original item, not from the start of this item. And so if I switch this over to the other view, so item settings, display item ruler, item time, now that's going to jump over, and 0 is always going to be at the start of this item. So I'm going to turn off snap to grid. I'll trim this item, and you see that the ruler always shows the left edge as 0. And if we have this one on source, it's always going to be relative to the original start of the item. And the other option, just so we have them all shown here, is hours, minutes, seconds, frames. And so this is much like the time ruler. It's always going to have the 0 point at the left edge of the item. And if you split it, that one is going to restart at 0. Now, it's not always convenient to go through the menu to do this. Item settings, it's pretty deep in there. You can also use the item menu. And so again, it's in item settings and display item ruler. Maybe a little bit easier to find that from the main menu. You can also open up the action list. Unfortunately, searching by ruler is not going to show you all of those, but you could do display item and it's these three ones here: display item source time, display item time ruler, and display item time ruler in hours, minutes, seconds, frames format. And have them selected and run this, and that's going to switch that to source time. Run it again, it's going to hide that ruler. So if it already has one enabled, it's going to switch it, and if you run that action again, it's going to toggle that view. If this is a feature that you're going to be using a lot, highly recommend putting this on toolbar buttons or some keyboard shortcut so you can access this instantly. There's no global setting. This isn't in the project settings to be on by default, and it's not in the preferences. It's only available through the menu or through the action list, but that might change based on the feedback from the community. If this is something that you want to have in the preferences, kind of makes sense to do that. If it's something you use a lot, may as well put it there. But, not a big deal to do an action in the meantime. So here's a bug fix. Mixer fixed slowness when opening Mixer. On the forum a couple weeks ago, there was kind of step-by-step what you could do to show a particular problem. For example, if you insert multiple tracks, we'll just put in 50 tracks, and we'll show the envelopes. Previous to this update, it would take 2 seconds, 3 seconds to show the mixer, and Justin has done something to make it instant. And basically, it was instant if you didn't have the envelopes shown. So some sort of weird bug. But we were able to narrow that down and get a very specific fix that's going to change like all your screen set loading times and things like that. Makes them much snappier. As for other performance changes, these things are a little bit trickier to explain and demonstrate unless you have it side by side. But the changelog says, performance improved low latency behavior by avoiding destroying media buffers from audio threads. Honestly, I have no idea what that means. Fix live effects multiprocessing issue with folder tracks causing media buffer underruns. That sounds like a good thing. And performance reduce audio buffer underruns when pausing. Again, that's something that was probably a very specific bug for a person, and Justin found several ways that he could improve performance overall for Reaper, and that's always a good thing. Now here's a specific thing for Mac users that require many thousands of files open at once. On Macs, there's a hard limit of how many files can be opened in a project or in Reaper at once, or really any app. There's a limit. And Reaper uses a whole bunch of files for the themes and extensions and all these things that need to be loaded at once. And then that leaves about 8,000 files for your project. So if you have a project that requires 10,000 files, you either get glitches or you really severely slows down, or you just can't open the project at all. So in this update, Reaper has a way that you can change the actual maximum open files limit, provided that you do a terminal command that fixes the Mac to allow that. So again, this is something that is not super common for everyone. You don't need to do this in most cases. This is important if you are working on films and you have thousands of sound files in the project, or if you're working on episodes and you need all the projects open at once to reference different files and being able to like easily jump between episodes. Having all those projects open really eats into that file limit. So you would close Reaper and you go into reaper.ini in a plain text editor, and you go to the Reaper section, search for Reaper. Right here. So anywhere below here, you can add in a line. For me, that would be line 697, but it depends on what other things are in your preference file. We can enter a thing like, I'll just copy and paste it. OSX max open files 40,000. You can add in an A to kind of automatically check what is required. Justin says a bit trial and error. I don't know. And or you can press V, and it'll have a little pop-up when you launch Reaper to show you what your limit's set to, if it was successful or not. And so that looks like this. Put that in here, save the file, and you want to do this with Reaper closed. You might want to, maybe the first time you do it with the V and you get that pop-up. The first time I did it, I got an error. It said it failed to change that limit. So it looked like this window, but here instead of OK, it said failed, and it said the limit was 8,100 something. So in that case, you need to do a terminal command, which is this. This is Justin's post here on the forum about this. So you'd open up terminal, and you paste that in, hit return, enter your password. Then the limit is changed on the Mac, and then in Reaper will accept that change and open up to 40,000 files. Can't really stress enough that this isn't something that most users need. This is going to be a thing where you have thousands of files, like 10,000 files in a project for sound design, for episodic work, for making sound libraries, where you have like multiple mics and multiple like effects printed, and you just have thousands and thousands of files in a project. If you start massive slowdowns, crashing, or just can't open this file because of too many files, that's the solution. I've seen this come up multiple times from some professional users, so this is really great to have this kind of a easy workaround or fix for them. In the last update, there was the option of exporting individual items through the master, and that included all the effects on its track in parallel and in its folder. Now we can also render tracks through the master. So the same sort of thing, but instead of for individual items, it can be all the items as one file, but include all of the downstream and parallel effects. So really cool to be able to do that. Just open up the render window, and so it would be selected tracks via master. So instead of stems selected tracks, which would be, you would just get what you hear from this track and not the master track, or not any parallel effects. Selected tracks via master is going to get you everything that you hear when you solo a track, for example. But you could do multiple tracks at once, and it should work much better for you. And there's been some improvements to wildcards. So the item wildcard, when rendering project regions, is going to work a lot better for you now. You can use the item and track wildcards when rendering selected media items via master. I thought that was working before, but I guess something changed there. And so that's everything on my list. That's where I'm going to leave it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Support the Reaper blog through Patreon, and visit reaperblog.net for a lot more tutorials.